Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Donald Chick and I am President and CEO of New Synergist Consulting. Our motto is, we see you. We provide a variety of leadership development and training services, strategy development, business analytics, and coaching for individuals and teams. Today I'll be leading a 1-hour webinar and our topic today is leadership and influence. I hope you enjoy it. Today we're going to talk about 4 main areas. 1, we'll provide a definition of leadership. And of course, there are multiple definitions, especially when you consider there are over 100,000 titles on the Amazon website talking about leadership. 2, we'll use the Hershey-Blanchard model to talk about situational leadership styles, how you can use them, what situations are best, and what you should be doing based on your personality. Thirdly, we'll talk about influence and the importance of influence. Now, you're always influencing those around you, but are you influencing them in a manner that will help you become a better leader and help your team become more responsible? And then finally, we're going to come up with a plan, how to put a plan together based on your personal goals so you can become a better leader. Let's provide some background on leadership. How has leadership evolved? Well, since the beginning of time almost, or at least the beginning of time in terms of the writings we might find, people have been searching for why leaders are successful and how do they become successful. And there's been differences of opinion. Great leaders are born, they have certain traits and abilities, and while those may be true or maybe not true, they don't help us understand what we should be doing to become better leaders. So one definition might be leaders simply provide direction and guidance. Well, that's not substantial enough to really help us understand what leaders do. But you might add to that, leaders are inspirational, they are motivational, they are responsible, they help others in terms of their followers be more responsible. But again, that's what leaders do. So one of the things we want to determine here is how do they do it? So the next thing we're going to get to is what are some characteristics of a good leader? The mark of a true leader is not a position or a title. It's simply how many people are willing to follow them. So what are some leadership characteristics that we ought to consider? The first one is honesty. We all want leaders who are going to be honest. Honest in the way they make decisions, how they share with us what's going on, and how they make sure they are being responsible at the same time they're asking us to be responsible. We want competence. We certainly don't want a leader, let's say, that's building a rocket ship or an airplane who has no understanding of how to do so. So that competence is important. We want leaders who are forward-looking. They're not stuck in the past. They lean toward innovation and improving the way things work. We want inspirational leaders. I mean, if you think of a speech even, like Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. First of all, he didn't start off with, I have a plan. He started off with, I have a dream. And from there, he was inspiring, providing hope and guidance to what's needed to make that dream come true. A dream that he hoped everyone that was listening to him also shared. We certainly want intelligence. Leaders who are not very smart, and that also means not willing to improve themselves and become smarter, regardless of their level of intelligence, aren't going to be very good for us. We want leaders who are fair-minded. Now, fair is a tough word. I want somebody who's fair. Fair is different for everybody, but fair-minded is certainly a goal we can pursue. We want to treat everyone as if we see them, not as just cogs in a machine, but we see them as human beings. We want leaders who are broad-minded. And we talked about forward-looking, but broad-minded can mean simply that our leaders are willing to listen to the ideas of others. And that's important for all of us to have that self-awareness. Are we willing to listen? That doesn't mean you're going to agree, but that means you're going to be able to empathize with the feelings and ideas of others and consider them when you're making decisions. We want leaders who are courageous. Now you might say, courage? Well, I don't understand why a leader needs to be courageous. Well, you do need to be courageous when the boss is literally saying, here's what we ought to do, or your team isn't performing well, or we're going to cut your budget. Is that leader willing to step up, raise his or her hand and say, that's not okay, and here's why? Not just arguing or disagreeing, but being able to present cogent materials that describe why more is needed. We want leaders who are straightforward, telling it like it is, not trying to make everybody feel happy or wonderful. We certainly want to do that, but if things need to change, leaders need to be able to be straightforward enough to support making those changes. And then finally, we want imaginative leaders. Leaders who are willing and able to imagine a better future, a more productive future, a future where we're including the opinions of everyone on our team and providing them with a way to be involved in decisions that are being made. No matter how intelligent our leaders are, how competent, how inspiring, how courageous, they are not smarter than the collective of their teams or their organizations. So we need them to have that imagination of what might look like or what is a better future than we're seeing today. One of the things I want you to consider on your leadership journey are having principles. We're going to talk about three main principles you should consider. One is self-awareness and continuous improvement. If you've read anything about emotional intelligence, you'll know one of the areas that's discussed is self-awareness, getting to know yourself. So if I ask you to describe yourself, one of the things I would offer is, I want you to describe yourself, but we're not going to talk about how many kids we have, or our marriage status, or how much money we're making, or even the type of job we're doing. When I ask you to describe yourself, what I'm really asking is, what do you like? What's in here that drives you? What's in here that might make you fearful? And as you go through that, you can start to ask yourself, are those things helping me become a better leader, or are they inhibiting me? Of course, we want to take advantage of those things that make us a good leader, and at the same time, we want to mitigate those things that are causing us not to reach our leadership goals. The second leadership principle is leading by example. It's very important to provide guidance and direction, as we mentioned earlier, but it's also important to make sure you're leading by example. One of my favorite leadership stories, leader of a fairly large company, they were some type of restaurant or fast food organization, and one day the chief executive visiting one of his restaurants noticed that the windows weren't as clean as he would like them to be. He didn't go to the manager and say, hey, make sure those windows get clean. He didn't go to one of the workers and say, hey, clean those windows. He went to the cleaning supply portion of the restaurant, got out a bucket, some rags, some window cleaner, squeegee, and he started cleaning windows. And when they asked him to stop, hey, we'll get to, he said, no, it's okay. I'll take care of that. And he did it. Now, the importance of that is not just his willingness to lead by example, but the fact that he was willing to do it. So he sent a message. Message one: no job is beneath anybody in this organization. Number two, cleanliness is important. It's important to me, therefore it should be important to you. Now, this organization had several hundred locations. I'm willing to bet within a day or so, every manager at every location heard about this window washing story. I'm also willing to bet that the windows were cleaner at every restaurant. And not just the windows. Every part of the restaurant was cleaner. We also hear stories, famous stories about McDonald's as they were growing to thousands of locations, where Ray Kroc would visit a location. Ray Kroc was the founder of the McDonald's Corporation, and he would pick up trash in the parking lot if he saw any. So there was a method to that madness, that leadership principle of leading by example. And finally, and these are all tied together, creating a sense of responsibility in every individual in your organization. And part of doing that is showing that you have a sense of responsibility, not just for leading the organization, but for everything that happens. So I'm going to provide another example, and you can find these examples in all types of companies, but the Navy has 11 leadership principles that they teach all of their leaders. And by the way, when we talk about leaders, everybody in the organization is a leader in some manner. Remember, I just want to remind you that leadership is not about a position. It's about what we do. So what are the Navy's 11 leadership principles? Principle number one: know your people and look out for their welfare. Boy, if you know me and I know you're looking out for me, will I be a better follower, a more willing follower, a more trusting follower? Number two, keep your people informed. One of the things about communication and keeping people informed is the fact that nature abhors a vacuum and people abhor a communication vacuum. It will be filled. Now, if the leader's not filling it, others are filling it, and maybe with information that's not accurate. Number three, know yourself and seek self-improvement. We talked about that earlier as one of the main principles. Know yourself and seek improvement. Be technically and tactically proficient. So whatever group you're leading, whatever they do, you need to be technically and tactically proficient in terms of getting the job done, producing results. 5, seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions. One of the worst things you can do, and I'll tell you this one from experience, personal experience, was having a leader who refused to take responsibility for things that occurred that weren't so great, but being oh so willing to take responsibility and credit for things that went well. Number 6, make sound and timely decisions. If you've never taken a decision-making course, please look at one and do so. Unfortunately, in too many cases, leaders make decisions that aren't sound because they haven't done the right things in terms of looking for all of the things that need to be accomplished and why, and then making decisions based on good data. in many cases, the decisions aren't timely. I've unfortunately seen decisions that are made very quickly about very critical changes in the organization. And in other cases, decisions that really need to be made like right now, today, drag on. They're complex, they're difficult, I get that. But decisions that are not timely are almost always bad decisions. Number 7, this gets back to our top 3, set the example. Don't expect to do one thing while you're telling your subordinates or others around you to do something else, and that they will gladly, willingly do it. Number 8, develop a sense of responsibility in your subordinates. Every person in an organization really is responsible for everything that happens. Now, that doesn't mean that they can change the course of things, but they need to be responsible. Just like that window washing example, somebody in that organization, before the CEO came out and started cleaning windows, needed to say, hey, we need to get the windows cleaned. And that's not just the manager's responsibility, although ultimately it is, and that's part of leadership as well. I hope if there was a discussion with the CEO and this particular restaurant manager, that the restaurant manager didn't blame one of his or her subordinates. Number 9, ensure that the task is understood, supervised, and accomplished. Understood, supervised, and accomplished. So number 1, understanding, and we'll talk more about this in situational leadership. You need to make sure you have the right people, so not only they can understand it, but they have the capability to make it happen. The supervision depends on their levels of capability. How much supervision do they need? Again, based on the task and based on those who are trying to accomplish the task. And then finally, it's all about results. So we want to make sure that task is accomplished. We can't throw out some direction and guidance and say, okay, I'm done. Train your people as a team. It's very easy to fall in the trap of every man, every woman for themselves, and then we don't have good teamwork. And literally, that's how organizations work. If you have an organization of more than a few people and they're not working together as a team, you're not taking full advantage of the productivity that you can have, that your team or your organization can achieve. And then number 11, employ your unit in accordance with its capabilities. And we've talked about that a little bit. What are its capabilities? Don't send a group of people or an individual out to do something that is above their capabilities. And it might be experience or training or tools or whatever the case may be. But make sure they have the capabilities needed to accomplish that. Our next topic, we're going to talk about situational leadership styles. Different situations require different types of leadership. And we ought to be capable as leaders of utilizing all of these styles depending on the situation. If we don't, our leadership may actually make a particular situation worse than it already is. So first, let's talk about the telling or directing leadership style. The first leadership style we'll discuss is called telling or directing. This style is most appropriate for new employees, employees who are less competent or skilled in a particular area where we'll have them to perform some task or multiple tasks. So what we want to do is we want to be highly involved and engaged with this employee to help them learn so they can move to the next, so we can use the next level of leadership when we manage this particular type of employee. We also want to be motivational so they get to the point where they're learning, where they're understanding what's going on, where they're more and more willing to, again, gain some confidence, gain some skills, gain some learning, so we can utilize the next level of leadership style with this particular employee or employees. Now, one of the things we need to remember is this is where positional leadership comes in. I'm in charge and you work for me, but it's really the lowest level of leadership. I want to repeat that again. This positional leadership is the lowest level of leadership. So we want to move up the continuum to higher levels, and we'll do that next. The next level of situational leadership is called selling. And in this level, we have employees who are not brand new employees who have developed or are improving in terms of their competence, but they may not be convinced about things like being responsible for the overall completion of tasks, or motivated enough that we can delegate, which is the level we'll talk about next. So in this level, selling, we need to be more motivational. Instead of always telling or directing, maybe we can start to provide suggestions of how things could be done better or how they can be improved. We want to help this employee move from the place where we need to be telling or directing or even selling, so they can move to the next level, which we would call participating. So in this level, it's really important to try to be motivational. This is arguably a level, and this can happen at any levels, where some people might say, she's being a micromanager. So we certainly don't want to do that. But with new employees, we need to be micromanagers, so to speak. But we want to start moving away from that in this level of selling, so we can move to the next level, which we call participating. The participating level of situational leadership typically involves employees who have a level of competence that you can count on. It may be inconsistent. They may not be as motivated as we like. They may need a little more support than we might find with employees that we can provide more delegation to without actually being there. In this case, we want to provide a more collaborative atmosphere where we're working together, not so much as supervisor subordinate. We still are. We can't forget that. But where we want to be more motivational and inspirational, where we might spend a little bit more time explaining why things need to be done a certain way, and getting to the point where we have a better understanding of the employee so we can help them on their journey to improve competence. So we can understand the types of things that they want and need on their career paths. So we can be more of a coach and mentor than we might be with a brand new employee or somebody who is really learning a particular skill or set of skills. So we want to help them move from where they are, higher levels of competence, maybe some inconsistencies, maybe some need for increased motivation, to a level where we can move to the situational style called delegation. Now we've reached the ultimate level of leadership, which is delegating. If we've done a great job with the other three levels, directing or telling, selling, participating, now we can take action in terms of leading by delegating. We have employees who are highly capable, committed, motivated, capable. They have the right tools and equipment, and we provided an environment that is inclusive, so when there are problems, they will either know how to solve them or they'll know who to come to help get those solved. The leader. If we're at that place, not only is our team and our organization going to be more productive, but we can be more productive as leaders. The time we spend, for instance, in the telling or directing can be moved into some other area, coaching, mentoring, continuous improvement, being innovative, looking for better ways to do things that we're already doing, looking for better ways to help employees solve problems. Those are where we can be most productive, and the people that are following us can be most productive. That's where we want to be. All too often, we forget about those things like coaching, like motivating, because we're so busy making sure the job gets done, making sure that we're following up. Doesn't mean we stop doing that when we're in the delegating area, but we certainly don't have to do as much of it. Certainly, because those folks that we've led and managed to the area where we can provide more delegation are capable of making sure the tasks get done. And then we can spend more time being leaders and supporting even more improvements. So that leads us to our next topic, which is enabling others. While understanding situational leadership is important, it is also important to understand that leadership is your ability to enable others to act. To be a true leader, you must enable others to act responsibly and not encourage bad worker habits by compensating for them or overlooking them. At the same time, you don't want to berate a follower for trying hard but making an honest mistake. The goal of a leader is to empower others to work successfully and produce good results. To the extent that you can do this is the extent that you will be successful. We also want to make sure we are encouraging growth in others toward that goal. Positive attitude and positive encouragement. No one likes to fail, and many will take it very personally. While failure should never be rewarded, an understanding attitude and positive outlook can work wonders. A child, for instance, only learns to walk by falling down. The focus is not on the fall, but on getting up and trying again. The goal is to walk and finally to run. We want to meet with employees one-on-one and provide positive motivation. Here again, you must use the power of listening. Avoid blame when something goes wrong and focus on the reasons for the failure. You may learn someone needs more training, more self-confidence, or even more freedom. You may learn someone does not have the tools needed to be successful. You will never know this if you don't ask questions and listen. Or worse, if you berate someone for failure, you may make them more willfully defiant. Take disciplinary action if necessary and document the conversation if you find someone is being willfully defiant. But hopefully you won't get there. If you allow someone to be defiant or lazy out of a misplaced concern for his or her feelings, you will be performing a great injustice against the rest of the team who may be working hard. In most cases, people really do want to do a good job, and they have a sense of pride when they meet a challenge. Part of making all of this work is to create mutual respect. Understanding that you will never be worthy of respect if you don't give respect. Respect should be given to everyone at all levels unless they deliberately do something to lose that respect. You need to build respect in other ways as well. Be visible. Show them you are available and interested in knowing everything about what they do. Develop and demonstrate your knowledge of the organization and details of the product, service, or operation. If you are perceived as being knowledgeable and can answer questions, you will not only earn respect, but you'll motivate others to learn as well. Finally, remember the importance of trust. Respect inevitably leads to trust. Do what you say and say what you mean. Under promise and over deliver always helps to manage expectations. If you're given a task that you know will take an hour, say you should have it done in 2 hours. You never know when you'll get a phone call that eats into your time or when an emergency may pop up. If you get it done in less than 2 hours, you may even be perceived as a hero. If you cannot get it done in that particular time that you promised, make sure you communicate with that individual or team and let them know that you apologize and you're working to get it done as soon as possible. If people feel they can rely on you, they will trust you. Also, let people know that you are not asking them to do anything that you would not do yourself or have not done in the past. Work hard. Be seen to be working hard. If you come in early and see others who are there early as well, stop by and simply mention that in a positive manner. A simple word of recognition will go a long way to earning respect. Without respect, you will never have loyalty, and without loyalty, you cannot trust your followers. Without mutual trust and respect, you will not be able to accomplish great things. Remember, while people need to be able to trust you, you need to build them up to the level where you can also trust them. So when we talk about situational leadership and leadership in general, what is our goal? Well, the goal is to enable others to act. And of course, situational leadership styles really are indicative of how you should enable others to act. What should you be doing as a leader? So everything you do or don't do can provide more enabling actions or less. When people make mistakes, how do you react to those mistakes? Does it become a learning opportunity or an opportunity to berate or criticize? When people accomplish a job, maybe under budget and ahead of schedule, but the way they did it doesn't meet with the principles and values that you hold and that the organization holds, how do you react to that? Do you simply congratulate them without any coaching or mentoring? Or do you actually talk about things like teamwork and dealing with conflict? So we need to make sure as we're moving through these actions that we're dealing with and thinking about how we're enabling others to act and be more productive. That's really what supervision, management, and leadership of people is all about. If either we're doing things that are helping people be more productive, or we're doing things that are making them less productive. And certainly is hopeful that we're not trying to make them less productive. So we need to be reflective. We need to make sure we have a deep understanding of ourselves and that we're continually learning and growing, asking for, in multiple ways, feedback on how things are going. What can we do better? How can I support you better? One of the things I think a lot of leaders miss is, for instance, when you're doing a performance appraisal. That performance appraisal should be a collaborative learning event. I want to help that employee understand how they performed, where I would like to see improvement, and how I can help them improve. I also want to make sure they understand the areas they need to improve in and how they can make those improvements. So some of the things we need to do when we're doing this is creating a level of trust. And I want you to utilize a skill or have a thought of a trust bank, for instance. And think of this trust bank as your bank account. Money's going in, hopefully, hopefully lots of money. And also money's going out because you have to spend money on food and clothing and shelter and taxes and everything else. If you take too much out, your bank account gets closed, or you aren't able to utilize, you don't have enough money in your bank account to do the things that you need to do. Pay your mortgage, for instance. So that's the same way that trust works. We need to build and create a trusting relationship because in some cases, hey, we have an emergency. I need you to stay late. I need people to work overtime. I need people to work on the weekend. If I have a trusting relationship, those things, those types of requests become much easier. Or it's simply a change of guidance that is not necessarily understandable, but we don't have time in the moment to explain why we're changing. If we have a trusting relationship, those types of decisions, that type of guidance becomes easier. And it's easier for people to make a commitment because in their minds, they'll say, hey, I trust my leader. And I know if she says we need to do it, there's something going on that's critical. And she'll tell me about it later or as soon as she can. So think about those things. Think about the types of situations. And we'll move on to the next topic, which is influence. And you will see how that ties together with providing guidance and direction, looking at situational leadership skills, and how you influence good performance. One of the key areas of influence is understanding and influencing other people's perspectives. If you haven't already heard it, and I'm sure you have, perception is reality. If people believe you have a closed door policy, they're less likely to come by your office to discuss issues with you. If they believe you aren't a good listener, they're less likely to communicate with you. If they believe you'll jump up and down and throw a temper tantrum if something bad happens, they're either more likely to hide things from you or just hope they go away by not communicating those things with you. So you have to not only address what you really feel, but what others' perspectives are. And if you can do a good job at that, you'll become a much better leader, and your followers will be much more productive and more collaborative. So the next thing you need to do is listen. And when I say listen, I mean really listen. When somebody's bringing you a problem or they're talking, in some cases, and this is getting to some of those principles we talked about earlier, know your people. Some people just want to vent or talk. And we don't always have time for that. But when we do, or when we can, just listen. Maybe provide recommendations, maybe not. So we want to listen closely so we get a true understanding of what's happening and what we may need to address in order to provide the support needed for the individuals that are following us. We need to make sure we understand their perspectives about things so we can make the right choices as a leader of that particular team or that particular organization. I've heard some leaders say things like, yeah, I read the employee survey and I think we got a bunch of complainers. Those things aren't happening in my organization. Well, there's two problems with that statement. Maybe two problems. First problem might be they are happening in your organization. And don't ignore those people who are willing to say it out loud. You actually would Well, I'll just say I actually would rather have people say it out loud so I have a chance to make sure I know it and can do something about it than people just acting like it's not happening. And two, that might be their perspective. But even if it's not happening, if that's their perspective, it's their reality. So I remember one situation where we had an employee survey and the employees said, hey, nobody gets an award around here. Management, leadership doesn't care. So instead of ignoring that, I didn't believe it, but instead of ignoring that, I had a report pulled, and the report said something like 90% of the individuals in that organization, the fiscal year that had just ended, received an award of some type. Not all monetary, and there was some percentage of monetary awards. So I wrote a little article for our newsletter talking about those numbers. And we started on a monthly basis producing the names of every individual that got an award. And we listed whether it was a monetary award or an attaboy or whatever it was. So people would know. So we can change perceptions versus they're wrong, move on to the next issue that might be right. So we want to be able to influence by one, understanding perspectives of people that work for us or that we're leading, and then doing something about those perspectives. And sometimes that just means simply repeating or sharing what's going on and not assuming that everybody knows. So listen, share, collaborate, and make sure you're seen at the job sites, in people's offices. I still remember a leader I had, the top leader when I first started working for the Navy, and he walked by my desk and he stopped and said hello. We are still friends well over 30 years later because I felt that he saw me. And because he was willing to walk around, I had never been to his office at that point, I saw him as well. When we think about influence, we can't allow ourselves to forget about the art of persuasion. Aristotle was a master at this art, and he outlines his thinking in his work Rhetoric, where he identifies three important factors: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos, or credibility, persuades people by using your character. If you are respectful, honest, people are more likely to follow you because of your character. Your character can convince the follower that you are someone who is worth listening to for advice. Pathos, or the emotional side of individuals, allows you to persuade people by appealing to their emotions. For example, when a politician wants to gain support for a bill, he inevitably may argue it's for the children, it's for the poor. Babies, puppies, kittens abound in advertising for a reason. And although a car is neither male or female, they are sometimes called sexy in car commercials. Pathos allows you to tie into emotional triggers that will capture a person's attention and enlist their support. Now, be careful about abusing it, because this abuse can lead to a loss of ethos. Finally, there's logos, or the logical. This is a way of persuading people by means of appealing to their intellect. This was Aristotle's favorite and probably his forte. However, not everyone reacts to a rational level of thinking or argument. Of the three, though, ethos must always come first.
ideally you want to appeal to pathos and back up your arguments with logos while never losing ethos. Think of people who are credible, who you view as honest, probably making you view them as trustworthy. They are more likely to use that credibility to tie into your emotions in terms of having you come around to their way of thinking or even appealing to your logic. So don't forget that when you think about the art of persuasion. We've talked about influence and we've talked about the art of persuasion as it ties into influence. And I'd like now to discuss 5 principles of influence that are important. Reciprocation. People are typically more willing to do something for you if you have already done something for them, or if they expect you to do something for them. So there's this reciprocal thought that is in all of our minds. Second, commitment. Don't expect to get people to commit to you or to your vision if they don't see your commitment. Once you are able to provide solid and consistent examples, they're more likely to feel they have to do the same. So you want to get committed followers. And remember, as we mentioned first, they're expecting to get something from you. Authority. We talked about credibility when we discussed the art of persuasion, and this is what authority is. If people believe you know what you're talking about, they are more likely to accept your expertise, and that means they are more likely to follow you. If you place a man in a suit and tie next to a man in jeans and a ratty t-shirt, people will invariably ask the man in the tie for advice on a technical subject simply because he looks like an authority. Now, it isn't always a tie and a suit, so to speak, but it depends on the place that you're working in and the type of work you're doing. You need to look like you know what you're talking about. Next is social validation. As independent as we like to consider ourselves, we all want to be validated. We love to be part of a crowd, the right crowd, the in crowd, so to speak. I don't know about you, but I know my mom used to say, if somebody jumped off a cliff, would you just follow them without thinking about it? Well, hopefully not. However, people tend to jump on bandwagons if their friends like the band and they're already on that wagon. And then finally, friendship. Probably nothing trumps friendship. People listen to their friends. If they know you and they like you, maybe for some of the principles we've already talked about, they are far more likely to support you. So remember, a pleasant personality can make up for a multitude of failures. More than one leader has been abandoned at the first sign of trouble simply because they were not well liked. One of the steps that we need to take as we prepare to create a personal action plan for improved leadership and influencing skills is a personal inventory. When doing this, we want to consider some of the things we've already talked about, the characteristics of a good leader, influencing skills, the art of persuasion, people that we know and respect as being good leaders. And we want to consider 3 questions. 1, what abilities are able to influence followers and bring them to accept our vision as their own? How do we communicate that? How do we make them feel that this is a person I want to follow? How do we influence that decision? Which of these qualities do I possess is question number 2. And number 3, which of these qualities do I need to develop? Now, even if you possess those qualities, it's likely they can be improved. And then if you don't have them, obviously you do want to develop them. But you also want to make sure you create some priority based on the goals that you're going to develop and based on your personality. So think of some things right at the top as you start to describe what this personal inventory looks like. How honest are you? Do people see you as cooperative? Are you determined to be successful? Are you able to inspire others? And do others see you, particularly your followers, as being loyal? So as you consider that, we're going to next talk about SMART goals. So in terms of SMART goals, here's what we mean. Here's what that acronym means in case you don't know it. The S is for specific. So your goals need to be very specific. And that means not things like, I want to make a lot of money in the next 5 years. Specific is, how much money do you want to make? How do you want to make it? The next part of that acronym is measurable. And this is why, again, you need to be specific, because how do you measure a lot of money? It depends on who you are. For Joe, a lot of money may mean a few $1,000s. For Mary, it may mean a couple $1 million. And of course, somebody else may say, a couple million, that's nothing. I earned that 10 years ago. So it needs to be measurable. Third, the A is attainable. Is it possible? Now, be careful about this one, because attainable is different for everyone. And some things that people think aren't attainable are actually attainable if they were willing to work at it and not give up. Now, walking on water, probably not attainable. For me, who loved basketball all my life and until knee injuries, thought maybe I had an outside chance of making it to the NBA, saying today that, well, in the next 5 years, I'm going to make it to the NBA. Well, I would argue that's not likely attainable. So make sure they're attainable. Then make sure they're relevant. Relevant to who you are and what you want to be and what you want to accomplish. And then finally, time bound. Now, we've already set the goal for a 5-year plan, but for each of your sub-plans or sub-initiatives, you need to set a goal. I'm starting today, but I want to accomplish X in 6 months. Maybe one of your goals is to lose weight. That's a lot of people's goals. So I want to lose 10 pounds in 4.5 months. See, it's specific, it's measurable. I think it's attainable for most people, especially if you are overweight. And it's time bound. You specified how long that should take. So that's what we mean by SMART goals. So once you've taken this inventory, the next step is to create an action plan. And this is the same type of subject I use when I coach individuals. I typically suggest that they use a plan that at least moves out for 5 years. And in our organization, New Synergists, we always talk about the positive. So what we're doing is asking you to create a picture of a positive future. So for now, I want you to ignore that inventory and look out 5 years from today and ask yourself, what do you want your personal and professional life to look like? No caveats. If you say, hey, I want to be worth $100 billion, we're going to start by being non-judgmental with ourselves and say, that's my goal. And I want you to write it down. That's another important piece. All of this is written down. It's not something I'm just thinking, because it's not just a dream. It's something we want to put in writing. So where do I want to live? What types of relationships do I want to have? What type of work do I want to be doing, if any?
What do I want my life to look 5 years from today's date? So that's step number one. And we write that down. And that will take you, I would argue, a minimum of 2 weeks. Write it down, reflect on it, change it, update it. Ask yourself, are you being judgmental? Are you leaving things out because maybe they're too hard, or maybe I don't want to do them? We're going to deal with that in the next step. So the next step is to ask yourself, how realistic is this plan? And realistic in terms of how determined am I to make this plan work? I'll tell you for myself, while if you want to give me $100 billion, I'll take it, assuming it's all legal and ethical. But I don't want to do the things that I know are necessary to make $100 billion. And I don't know that I need it or want it that badly. So in this case, this is why we want to make sure we understand ourselves. We're going to take these things we've written down, and we are going to attempt to determine what we want to leave in there, what really makes sense for us. Not for anybody else, but for us as an individual. And then we want to work backwards in that plan to see what we need to start doing today and tomorrow, where we work up to that plan. With the understanding that this is a living plan that may change or be adjusted, but that we're determined to make sure, at least at the 85-90% level, that we're going to accomplish these things that we set out to accomplish in terms of our leadership goals at a personal and professional level. Once we do that, we want to bounce that against that inventory, and that'll give us some points of and some areas where we want to start. What do we need to look at? What tools do we need? Who do we need to interact with? What type of people, and be specific about those people, do we need to engage as coaches and mentors? Because we'll all need help, most likely, on this journey that we're deciding to take. So once we have that plan, then we get a sub-plan that says, here's what I'm going to do each year, and here are the results that I expect to have, and here's how I can track my progress. Now, creating your action plan, some areas that I just want to make sure you are going to address. So set your goals. What are your leadership goals? Now, we want you to be a continuous learner, as we talked about earlier, but you want to rank in priority order those qualities you want to develop. So what's more important? What's more critical? What's going on now that you want to fix immediately or as soon as possible? And address those goals. How are you going to accomplish them? What do you need to learn? Do you need to learn more about teamwork? Should you take a class in teamwork, or should you join a team of some sort? It could be a sports team, a debate team. It could be a team of individuals that support your community in some way. You want to be a better communicator or writer? Take a creative writing class. Take some training on doing better presentations. Some of these things are available on the web. Maybe your organization has a training program where they provide this, but find it somewhere. Seek inspiration. Learn about a variety of leaders, including their styles and how they deal with challenges. Read books, conduct research. Look for people that you might want to emulate and how they accomplished whatever it is they accomplished, and how that may have relevance to what you want to do. Choose role models. What type of individual fits your personality? Is it a Dr. Martin Luther King, a great orator and speaker, great inspiring leader? Or is it an intellectual leader like Albert Einstein? So read as many biographies as you have a chance to, and look at what these people are accomplishing and how they're doing it, and see what fits with your goals and needs. Seek experience. So create a personal mission statement. Imagine your legacy. How do you want to be remembered? What do you want people to think of you? What type of leader are you determined to be? Write a mission statement that defines who you want to become. To be a leader, you must first see yourself as a leader. Based on what you learned today, I hope you understand the qualities that are needed to become a good leader. I hope you also understand that you have to put a plan in place in order to become a better leader yourself. If you've ever had a bad boss who infuriated you to the point of even wanting to quit your job, you likely have an understanding of the qualities that make for poor leadership. On the other hand, if you've had a parent, a coach, a teacher, a supervisor who inspired you and made you want to become better and more productive, you also understand the qualities that make for a great leader. So good luck in your personal leadership journey, and remember, we see you.